What's going on, my friends? Brezzy43 here. After a long weekend, I was hoping to get this content up sooner, but I had to work this past weekend. Hopefully, my last weekend working the graveyard shift, as my schedule should be returning back to some form of normalcy. But here we are. We left off middle of last week talking about water types and their prevalency and how good I think that some of them might be in the metagame. And the day after I posted my last video, we got some earth-shattering news. Not really earth-shattering, but Series 8 was announced. So this is my first full adventure into VGC. I've always kind of followed it myself, just like watching people play it or watching pros play it, following the scene. But I've never actually played in one of these formats. This is the format that everyone was talking about. This is the restricted format. So how does it work? What is it? We're going to talk about all that. We're going to touch on a tier list as well. I thought it might be really fun to do a tier list for the restricted Pokemon, giving you guys my opinions as to which ones I think will be good, as well as the ones that are obviously going to be good and the obviously unplayable ones. So we'll dive into that afterwards, but first we'll get into Series 8. Also, just wanted to continue on here. We still have technically, I think, 6 days. I'm checking my calendar right now. We still technically have until this next Sunday to ladder Series 7. So I will probably do another video with that Lapras team, and I might squeak in one more with another Water-type team, just because of the way that this new format sounding like it's going to shake out. Things will change, but they may not change as much as people thought. So let's dive into it. I've got Cerebi up here, and we're going to take a look at Series 8. So Series 8 is a new rule set. You will be allowed to use a restricted Pokemon, one Pokemon on your team. This is new for this type of format. Usually, in the past, the restricted format has allowed you to use two restricted Pokemon on your team. But in this case, you can only use one. The rest of it's going to stay the same, it looks like, for the most part. They're still allowing all the Gigantamaxes. The battle time's going to be the same. Your time's going to be the same, etc. So these are the restricted Pokemon in a list here. Of all the ones that you are allowed to bring one of them to your on your team to any battle. So you've got these are basically all the box topper legendaries, all the chase legendaries from any game. So Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Reshiram, Zekrom, Kyurem, and both Kyurem forms I believe should be legal as well. Xerneas and Yveltal and Zygarde, and then Cosmog, Cosmoem, Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma, and then also Necrozma Duskmane and Necrozma Dawnwings when Necrozma fuses with these two, and then Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus, Calyrex, and both forms of Calyrex Horse. The Pokemon that are still banned are these mythical Pokemon. There's not much to say about it. Game Freak hates these. Our Pokemon Company hates these Pokemon, I swear. They're never legal. Some of them are pretty messed up. Like Magearna is probably pretty messed up. And Melmetal seems to be pretty good from what I've seen so far. But anyway, these are still the only Pokemon that are banned. Don't bring these. Can't use them. But there's a lot of potential here for a lot of these Pokemon to be good. Some of them have been legal before. Some of them have not been. But you are allowed to bring one of them onto your team. And you can use them in battle. So that's pretty exciting, pretty awesome. So which ones are actually going to be good? Which ones aren't? How are we supposed to know? Well, we're going to do a quick dive into them right now. I've got a tier list up here. All of the Pokemon that are going to be legal and might see use. I've got them up here. I've already got a general idea of where I'm going to place them. So I'm just going to tell you off the bat here. Oh, I actually don't even think I need the E tier. I added this E tier because I was worried about Cosmog and Cosmoem, but they're not even on this list. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this D tier. It's not needed anymore. We're gonna just talk strictly about these tiers. So I'm just gonna tell you how I'm gonna rank them here before I do it. D tier is going to be bad Pokemon. there's just really no reason to use them. They might have a small niche that you could try, but generally they're going to be outclassed by a lot of what else is going on in the format or with other restricted. Remember, you only get one restricted slot. A lot of people were talking about previously how you got two restricteds and you could find some synergy between the two of them. You know, we saw things like Groudon Xerneas, we saw things like Kyogre Rayquaza, we saw things like Kyogre Rayquaza, or Kyogre Groudon, we saw things like who else was good in the past? I'm trying to remember. That was mostly the big three or big four: Xerneas, Groudon, Rayquaza, and Kyogre. But keep in mind as well that that Kyogre and Groudon don't have their and Rayquaza don't have their Mega Evolutions, so that will be factored into this as well. I know that Lunala and Solgaleo have seen a little bit of usage, not a ton, but some. So D tier is going to be things that might have a niche. They probably have some argument you could make for using them, but generally they're not going to be very good. There's going to be better options. They're going to struggle for a variety of reasons against different things. C tier is going to be things that have something going for them. They have some sort of a strength that you could lean into, but generally going to be outclassed. Remember, you only get one restricted slot, so making sure that your restricted Pokemon is very good and synergizes with your team is very important. B tier is going to be Pokemon that I personally think are very good and that have a bit more going for them than C tier. And excuse me, sorry, y'all. And then B tier is that's B tier. B tier is going to be things that I think are good, things that other people will probably agree are good. Better than C tier, probably usable on a team. In fact, in some cases, might be very good. Some of it's going to be speculation in this B tier, just because Dynamax changes a lot of things. There's Pokemon that are probably going to be good out of this restricted list that maybe weren't good before because of Dynamax. So that's going to be something. A tier is going to be really good Pokemon. Not quite going to be S tier. S tier is going to be the cream of the crop. There's going to be two of them, I think, maybe three. But they're going to be the best of the best, the things that you should watch out for, the things that you should play around. And A is just going to be solid Pokemon, things that are very good, that have shown through the test of time that they are good, and kind of go from there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to go ahead and start on I think I'm going to start on just going through the list here. So Calyrex Ice. I think Calyrex Ice is actually an A tier Pokemon. I think it's very good. If we pull up its stats, we can take a look at it here. So very slow for Trick Room. Can set up its own Trick Room as a Psychic Ice type. 165 attack is insane. 150 defense is very good. 130 special defense and 100 HP. This thing checks all the boxes for stats. Very, very strong Pokemon. Good, like reasonable. It has no 4x weaknesses. It has quite a few weaknesses, but not a ton. It gets its signature move, Astral Barrage, which, where is it? I think it's called Astral Barrage. I don't even know what it. I think it. My understanding is that it's Astral Barrage is spread Icicle Crash with 100% accuracy, I believe is what it is. Looks like it also gets Lash Out, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's Calyrex Ice. This thing's going to be really good. It's probably going to be one of the best Trick Room. This is actually the slowest of the restricted Pokemon, which is important to note as well. It has a lot going for it. It's definitely something to think about. This As One ability is a combination of Calyrex's ability, which is Unnerve, and then Chilling Neigh, which is Glaistrier's ability, or if you use the Ghost one, Spectre's ability is Grim Neigh, so it'll be a combination of the two of them. So every time this thing picks up a knockout, it gets an attack boost. It also prevents your opponent from eating berries. Overall, just a really insanely strong Pokemon. These stats are absurd. Usually restricted Pokemon, you see a good amount of stats wasted in the other attack stat. Not this thing. This thing is pretty much laid out exactly how you would want it, and this thing's going to be a problem. So definitely need to make sure that it's here. The reason why it's not an S tier is because its Psychic Ice typing is completely walled by Steel. Steel resists both both of your stabs. You have an immunity. Dark is immune to your psychic typing. Certain types are going to completely wall this thing. So that's part of the reason why it's not an S tier. That being said, it pairs really nicely with something like Indeedee or another follow me or redirection user that can help you safely set up Trick Room. So that's Calyrex Ice. Calyrex Ice is going to be very solid in my opinion. Calyrex Ghost I actually think is also an A tier mon. We'll pull up this thing as well. Shadow Rider. This thing is a bit frailer than the other one. At 150, at 80 defense, 100 special defense, but it has 150 speed, which is one of the fastest, if not the fastest restricted Pokemon. We're gonna check that right now. Base stat total. Speed. Yes, Calyrex Shadow is the fastest Pokemon out of all the restricteds. Zacian is just shy of that at 148. So 150 is definitely a fantastic speed tier to be. Fourth fastest Pokemon of all time. So Calyrex is definitely the cream of the crop in my opinion. The reason why it's not an S tier is because it's frailer than the other one, despite being really fast, and it is a Psychic Ghost type, which means that it has 2 4x weaknesses, Ghost and Dark, which are the only 2 weaknesses it does have. However, it has serious issues with Dark types. Dark types completely wall this thing. At least with Ghost, you can kind of circumvent that by just hitting it with Ghost as well. But both of your stabs are either resisted or immune by Dark. So definitely something to think about if you're going to use this thing is you need to have an answer to Dark types, because something like Incineroar or Tyranitar or something like that is going to give you a lot of problems as this thing. But stats are insane, very snowbally with this Asmon ability. Definitely something to look out for. So that's Calyrex Shadow. Dialga. Dialga, hot take, Dialga is A tier. It might even be S tier. Why do I think Dialga is A tier? Well, let's take a look at Dialga's stats. Dialga is a special attacker. Could be run physical if you needed it to be, but overall, better to be special. Good bulk, phenomenal typing. It gets access to its hidden ability now, which is telepathy, which makes it immune to its allies' attacks. So something like an earthquake or something like that from your ally could come out, and you'd be okay. You wouldn't have to worry about that. Steel Dragon. Why is this thing good? Well, we've seen Duraludon have some success in previous formats, where Duraludon is a Steel Dragon type from this generation. Quite a bit lower on stat totals, only 535, but these 2 weaknesses are pretty easily accounted for in your team building, and you have fantastic resistances across the board, and your Dynamax moves are very good. You get Steel to boost your defense, Dragon to lower your opponent's defense, and Dialga also gets Earth Power, which is phenomenal coverage against opposing Steel types. So I think Dialga has a lot going for it. I think it's definitely an A tier mon. Like I said, it may even creep up into the S tier. Dialga is a Pokemon that I'm going to be looking to use pretty early on and try some things out with it. Very, very solid Pokemon. Probably looking like something with... It's got access to a lot of good coverage moves, but I would imagine it would be something like Earth Power, Roar of Time, and then probably Flash Cannon. So, and then Protect maybe, or a 4th move and Assault Vest. It's up to you. You could do a lot of different things with it. Duraludon has historically ran Assault Vest, so that could be an option. But I like Dialga a lot. I think Dialga's great. Next, we have Eternatus. Eternatus is a C tier Pokemon, in my opinion. If we take a look at its stats, you can Eternamax it, obviously. That would be very good. But Eternatus, 690 base total is actually the highest base stat total out of all of them. It's got very good speed, very good special attack, and very good HP with reasonable bulk. However, this is one of the new Pokemon from Sword and Shield that cannot Dynamax. So that's something going against it. It can't Dynamax. The second thing is that even though it gets access to Dynamax Cannon, which does double damage if the opponent's Dynamax, which essentially is just normal damage. Because remember, if your opponent Dynamaxes a Pokemon, they double their HP. You hit it with a double powerful move, a double powered move, then it basically just is like attacking the base form of it, right? So that's definitely really strong. But Poison Dragon is completely walled by Steel again, and this thing does get Flamethrower, but not all Steel types are going to be weak to Flamethrower. So this thing does get walled by Steel types, and 130 is not really the fastest to justify this low of bulk. And I just think I think you could use this. It has some things going for it, but the fact that you can't Dynamax it and you struggle so much with Steel types is, in my opinion, you can find a better restricted Pokemon to use. However, if you account for Steel types on your team with another way to hit them, then Eternatus is probably going to be fine. Giratina. I don't know if Giratina Origin is legal, but Giratina Base is legal. This is another C tier Pokemon. This thing we've seen Dragapult put in work. We've seen Dragapult put in work in this format. Dragon Ghost is a phenomenal typing. You have 5 weaknesses, but 2 of them in Dragon and Ghost you account for yourself. And Giratina is very bulky. It's 150 HP, 120 both defenses, and 100 in both attacks. So technically, if you had a way you could put a weakness policy on this thing and proc it yourself and kind of go to work. That being said, I don't think this Pokemon stats are really quite there for restricted Pokemon. It's a little bit too heavily in bulk. Even if you could use the Origin form instead, 120 in your offensive power with 90 speed is pretty lackluster. That being said, we've seen weakness policy put on these Pokemon and does quite well for a lot of them. So if you wanted to try Giratina, you could try a weakness policy set. You could try a couple of different builds. I think there's a lot of cool things that you can do with Giratina. It just, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's quite there stat wise or offensive capability wise to warrant a spot on your team as your only restricted Pokemon. So for that reason, I think Giratina is a C. Mr. Groudon. So, Groudon, I have a lot to say about Groudon, actually. Groudon lost its fire typing. Because Groudon is not primal any longer, it does not get its fire typing. It remains just as a ground type. That being said, still really good stats. 150 attack, 140 defense, 90 in speed, and 90 speed def. Not too bad. 100 HP is pretty solid as well. I've been seeing some teams pop up with Groudon plus Venusaur. I think people are calling it Venudon. Pretty solid because Groudon in some cases won't want to Dynamax. This is one of the few Pokemon that's warrantable as a restricted shot that doesn't necessarily want to Dynamax. Precipice Blades it still gets access to, even though it's not a primal form anymore. So you would probably run something like Precipice Blades, and then you would probably run something like a Fire move for coverage, Fire Punch maybe, or you could technically run it, if you wanted to run a slow Groudon for Trick Room, you could technically run minus Speed Nature plus one of your attacks, and you could run it mixed with Eruption as well. That's not terrible. This thing basically just replaces Torkoal on the Sun teams and has a lot more going for it in terms of stat totals, and it can Dynamax and boost its special defense with Max Quakes, which is really solid. It gets access to some decent coverage moves. It looks like it gets a fighting move. It looks like it gets let's see. Heavy Slam could be okay. Iron Head could be fine. Stone Edge is okay, but it does overwrite your weather, so you have to be mindful of that. But Groudon only being a ground type in this case is not as good as it was before with Primal, where it only had 2 weaknesses, but one of them was completely removed which was water. So, but Groudon, however, still, in my opinion, a B tier Pokemon. You compare it with Venusaur, it does very well. It might be an A tier. I don't think it's an S tier. Groudon has a lot going for it in that it's very good typing against some of the titans of the format. Some of the steel types, Zacian for example, can't hit this thing super effectively, and you can hit Zacian super effectively, which is a big deal. So for that reason, that might push it up into A tier. But for now, I'm comfortable putting Groudon in B tier. It's still going to see usage, still going to see play. It's solid, good Pokemon. I don't think it's quite as good as it used to be. Becoming just a mono ground type definitely doesn't help it out that much. But it's still a lot of things going for Groudon that I think is going to be really solid. Ho-Oh. Hot take in my opinion, I think Ho-Oh is a B tier Pokemon. I think it's got more going for it than these C tiers. If we take a look at Ho-Oh, I think this is gonna pull it up. Yeah. So because of the ability patch, Ho-Oh is gonna get access to his hidden ability Regenerator, which is a phenomenal ability. Ho-Oh has good offensive capabilities with 130 attack and Sacred Fire, which is a really big deal. 90 speed is a little bit lackluster, but it's not a huge deal. 154 special defense, 138 attack, and 106 HP is reasonable bulk with 90 in defense, which is not terrible. You would probably run this thing physical or mixed. Sacred Fire with Sky Attack could be good as a Dynamax option. And you can Brave Bird it gets as well. It looks like Zen Headbutt, Iron Head, good coverage moves, Earthquake, things like that. So you could make Ho-Oh work reasonably well and be happy about it. And for that, with Regenerator and Sacred Fire being potentially very solid. And typing wise, Zacian only can hit this thing if it has electric coverage, which is really good. You resist its other two stabs, and you also resist fighting, which it commonly carries. I'm just going to do this right now. Where is it? There it is. S tier. Zacian's stupid. It's dumb. We'll take a look at it real quick, because a lot of my decisions on my tier list came as a feature of how does it match up against Zacian, and how does it do in Dynamax. So people are calling Zacian Mega Mawile's older brother, basically. Mega Mawile it ran rampant through Oris and Sun and Moon because it was so good, and this thing is even better. So it does. You have to have your held item be the Rusted Sword, but you have a Zacian here with the 720 base stats, which brings its attack up to 170, speed 148, phenomenal bulk, and reasonable HP. And from here, Intrepid Sword gives you an attack boost whenever it switches in. Only has 2 weaknesses, Fire Ground, 2 immunities, and Dragon Poison. It is phenomenal typing. A lot of people, you see a lot of sets usually. I've seen some Swords Dance. I've seen some Substitute. I've seen, where's Substitute? Is it a TR? Maybe not. Maybe he just learns it. Y'all, am I blind? There it is. TR20, it gets Substitute. Some people I saw were running his unique steel move, which is called Behemoth Blade, which is similar to Dynamax Cannon from Eternatus. It's 100 power, 100 accuracy steel move that gets doubled in power if it targets a Dynamax Pokemon. So it's probably steel move, and then Play Rough it gets, and it also gets Close Combat, Wild Charge, things like that are really good. For coverage purposes, I've seen some people forego the Fairy move, which is crazy if you've got that many better options to run. But Wild Charge gives you an answer to things like Kyogre, and flying types like Ho-Oh, like we were just talking about. Fighting gives you coverage on Steel, and then Steel is your best spammable move. So potential that this is obviously like the Pokemon to beat. This cannot Dynamax. It's another thing to note. It can't Dynamax, but this thing is going to be the Pokemon to beat. When you're building your teams, you've got to have an answer to Zacian. You've got to be thinking about it. So a lot of my Pokemon that I've been putting on the tier list so far have been put on the tier list in such a way that they are either a good Dynamax candidate, or they match up well against Zacian, or in the case of the 2 Calyrexes, they just have super high base stat totals that, if you can account for Zacian somewhere else in your team, these things could snowball you out of control. But Dialga is a fantastic Dynamax Pokemon that can also reasonably pressure Zacian, especially if Zacian is not carrying a fairy move. It can only hit you with Close Combat, which will make it weaker in return. Groudon pressures Zacian well, and Ho-Oh matches up well against Zacian as well. So that's part of what is going into my tier list here. So I'll do that now just to get it out of the way. The next Pokemon is Kyogre. Kyogre, if we take a look, it's going to have the same base stat totals as Groudon, just flipped. So it's got 150 special attack instead of a physical attack, 140 special defense instead of defense. Really good Pokemon. It obviously doesn't have its primal anymore, so it doesn't get all these souped up stats, but it does get access to Water Spout and Still Origin Pulse, depending on which one you want. And it also gets access to Ice Beam and Thunder. People know, you all know about this Pokemon. This Pokemon's really good. In my honest opinion, I think it's an A tier Pokemon. I think there's going to be a lot of Kyogre. Kyogre is phenomenally typed. It's just mono water, so it only has 2 weaknesses. And resistance is really good resistances across the board. Resistance to steel is good. Resistance to fire is good. Resistance to water is nice, and same with ice. And people are running a duo referred to as Tornogre. It's Tornadus and Kyogre. Tornadus is a prankster Tailwind user that also relies heavily on Hurricane for damage output, which, because Kyogre sets up the rain, you can get 100% accurate Hurricanes off. And you can give Tailwind to Kyogre, who at base 90 really appreciates Tailwind. So that's Kyogre, A tier Pokemon in my opinion. You're going to see it. It's going to be around. You're going to have to account for it. Like I said, probably Water Spout or Origin Pulse alongside Ice Beam or Electric Move. Some people ran double water in the past. Some people ran both Water Spout and Origin Pulse. Sometimes if you can get the speed control, Water Spout's going to be really good. Other times when you're lower HP, you're going to want the Origin Pulse damage. So that is, and the reason why you run Origin Pulse over Hydro Pump, 1, it's more accurate, but 2, it also is a spread move. It hits both of your opponent's Pokemon, so that's why Origin Pulse is really good. Same with Precipice Blades from Groudon. So Kyogre, A tier Pokemon in my opinion. Kyurem. Kyurem is a D tier Pokemon in my opinion. Kyurem does not have a lot going for it. If we take a look at Kyurem, I think I'm going to spell it wrong. There it is. So, I don't know if Kyurem's alternate forms are here. It doesn't look like it. If we can use Kyurem Black and White, then I think the black one is probably B tier, and I think the white one is probably A tier, or B and C tier. This one's going to be higher than the other one because it is a special attacker, which is really nice. So, I don't know if they're going to be legal or not, but 170 special attack is really, really high. But base Kyurem does not have a lot going for it. It's reasonably fast and has good HP and good offensive capabilities, but I'd like to see its typing is just, it struggles. It's going to get walled by ice types, or by by steel types. You're going to struggle against fairy types, and it doesn't really match up that well against other things in the format. I don't like it. I don't think it's very good. I think you could in theory use it and be okay, and probably find something that would work for it. But in my honest opinion, I don't quite think it's there, stat wise or typing wise or ability wise for that matter. If you can use either of these two, which I don't know if you can, if I'm being honest. Let's look at I don't know if you can. Maybe you can. If you can, I think the black one is probably a C tier. 170 base attack is really high. And it has a bit better defenses and such, and then white is the better of the two because it's a special attacker and it's harder to mitigate the damage coming out of it. So that's Kyurem. Probably you could probably find a better restricted Pokemon to throw on your team, but if you really wanted to use Kyurem, you could make it work. Lugia. Sorry, I've got my notes down here for each of these Pokemon. That's why I keep looking down. Lugia, in my honest opinion, is a D tier Pokemon. It hurts me to do this because Lugia is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon ever since I was a child. I started playing in Red and Blue, but Lugia was my favorite when Gold and Silver came out. Stat-wise, this thing's just not there. It's seen some usage in singles, in Uber singles, as a just a meat shield, just a big old wall that just takes hits and takes hits and takes hits. Um, that being said, 110 speed is pretty nice. 154 and special defense, 130 defense, and 106 HP is very good bulk. 90 in the offenses is a little bit lackluster. You will see people who will use Lugia and they will throw a weakness policy on it and they will volt switch into it with their Regieleki, and they'll try to smack you with it. And it might win a couple of games. It might be okay. It might be better than I'm expecting it to be. However, again, completely walled by steel types. Struggles versus dark types, especially something like Tyranitar that I think is probably going to be pretty good in this metagame. You don't really have a good way of dealing with Tyranitar. You've got Aeroblast, which is a solid move. You probably have to run a Psychic move of some sort. It does not get Expanding Force, so you can't even run Expanding Force. You probably have to run Psyshock, or you could run it physical, but I would not recommend running this physical. And then probably Hydro Pump. So just not a lot going for Lugia, unfortunately, outside of being really bulky. Multiscale is an incredible ability, but if you're volt switching into your own Lugia with a Regieleki for a weakness policy, you're kind of removing your own multiscale boost, which is kind of an anti-synergy in my opinion. But people will use it, so just be on the lookout for it. But in my opinion, definitely a D tier Pokemon. Now we're starting to get into some territory that I don't know as well. From past experiences, I can give you my hypotheses on it. This is part of where Kyurem falls in as well. So just to give you guys a quick Pokemon background for me, I played Red and Blue, I played Gold and Silver, and I played Ruby and Sapphire. Ruby and Sapphire probably the most out of all of them, but I did play all three of those. I played through Diamond and Pearl once, and then I did not play Black and White. I came to X and Y late, and I came to... I joined up again in Oris when Ruby and Sapphire got remade. I played those. I did play Sun and Moon, but I did not follow much of the competitive scene during Sun and Moon. I followed a lot during Oris and X and Y, and then I followed a lot during, obviously now. But Sun and Moon I didn't follow as much. So I don't know a ton about Lunala. I know that Lunala is the same typing as Calyrex, and it's got a reasonable speed stat. But I think it struggles a little bit too much just by, again, Dark and Ghost being 4 times effective. A fast Ghost type is going to knock you out. You're going to struggle against Calyrex. You might even struggle against Zacian because you have a 89 defense stat. This Pokemon doesn't really Dynamax that well either because Ghost, as a max move, reduces your opponent's defense, and Psychic sets up terrain. So doesn't really do a lot of synergy as a Dynamax Pokemon. However, I think it's got a bit more going for it than D tier, so I think I'm going to put it in the C tier. You could make this thing work. I think it has some things going for it. Shadow Shield is a very good ability. It's basically just multi-scale. But I think that all in all, you're going to probably have better options than Lunala for your restricted slot. Mewtwo. Mewtwo, if we take a look, Mewtwo has one of the highest attacks, offensive stats at 154, and it's got decent bulk, reasonable speed at 130 and 106 HP. Unfortunately, though, Mewtwo is a mono psychic type. It does get access to Unnerve as its hidden ability, and it does get Expanding Force. So those are things going for it. Things not going for it, terrible Zacian matchup. Can't do anything to Zacian. You don't get a coverage move, I don't believe. You get a physical one. You do get Flamethrower, but that's not going to hit very hard. You do get Fire Blast, which is kind of okay. The thing is, though, is if you're going to run Mewtwo and you're going to run Expanding Force, you don't really want to max. You want to sit back and click Expanding Force, which is not going to do much damage to opposing steel types, and dark types are going to wall you and pressure you. Things like Calyrex Shadow are going to one-shot you. That being said, you could pair this with Indeedee and set up terrain and get redirection pressure and be able to throw out powerful Expanding Forces. But Just looking at these top 5 Pokemon that we have so far, the only one of these that you hit for neutral damage is Kyogre. The other 4 resist you and pressure you back, or pressure your partner back. So for that, I think Mewtwo is a D tier Pokemon. It does have a couple, like, you could do Expanding Force stuff, but I don't necessarily think that Expanding Force stuff is very good right now, given that there's so many things that resist Psychic in the top of the metagame. Necrozma Dawn Wings. This is another Pokemon I know even less about. But if we take a look at it, basically my understanding is Necrozma fused with Lunala and Solgaleo to get... I didn't even know that this thing existed. Okay. You basically, you lose HP and speed stats in favor of your other stats, essentially. So really good special attack stat, really good special defense stat. Slower, which makes it better as a Trick Room option now that it can set up Trick Room. This is basically just it's like Solid Rock from Rhyperior. You're only 3 times weak to your Dark and Ghost weaknesses rather than 4 times. That being said, I only think this Pokemon's a step up from where we currently are. I think this is probably a C tier or a B tier Pokemon. I don't necessarily think that this thing's going to do anything crazy. It's good. It's fine. 77's good speed for Trick Room compared to, which is funny to say, but compared to a lot of other Pokemon that will be, a lot of the other restricted, this is one of the slower ones. So you could have a potential option for Trick Room. You match up pretty well against the Ice Horse, given that you resist one of its stabs and you can hit it back super effectively with Ghost. But it all depends on what the partners are and how the teams shake out. But I think this is just a solid B tier Pokemon. Necrozma Duskmane, I think is actually an A tier. I think this thing's very good. Prism Armor, reducing your weaknesses by, so you're only 1.5 times weak, is really solid. This is Metagross's typing, Steel Psychic. 157 attack is very good. 77 speed's very, very good for Trick Room. You've got a nice quad resist to Psychic. You're only 1.5 times weak to the things that you're weak against. You have a reasonable Zacian matchup in that you can kind of ignore it or hit it back. You at least hit it back neutrally with Steel, where Zacian, you resist Zacian's attacks. Zacian being Steel Fairy makes it so that way you at least hit it neutrally, which is really solid. So in my opinion, Necrozma, A tier. Palkia. So Palkia is the other Diamond and Pearl legend. Very similar stats to Dialga. However, given its typing, I think it's actually going to be a B tier Pokemon. It might even be A. Water Dragon's a good typing. Water doesn't do a lot when maxed, but you have a 4 times resistance to Kyogre. You resist Steel. You are weak to Fairy, but that all depends on if Zacians are running Play Rough. Like I said, I've seen some that don't even run Play Rough and they just run Wild Charge, Close Combat, and Behemoth Blade. Some of them run Close Combat, Behemoth Blade, Protect, and Sub. It's kind of a toss-up at this point, but I think Palkia is probably a B tier Pokemon. Water Dragon's phenomenal typing. You only have 2 weaknesses, and you account for one of them being Dragon. You hit your own Dragon weakness super effectively. Pretty good stats overall. Dynamax is probably going to help this thing out quite a bit, but I think Palkia might actually be a B tier Pokemon. Mr. Rayquaza. Definitely not the Titan that it used to be. Let's take a look at its stats quick. So when it was a Mega, as you can see, this thing was just dumb. It still has very phenomenal offensive capabilities, but Dragon Flying is not a super amazing typing. You're going to have trouble with Steel types. You have a reasonable HP, but your bulk is a little bit low, and your speed is nothing really to write home about. 95 is pretty slow in the grand scheme of the restricted Pokemon. You get outsped by Dialga and Palkia, so there's something to say about that for sure. I think that Rayquaza still has some niche. It does still get Dragon Ascent, which is an incredible move. Where is Dragon Ascent? If I remember correctly, it's 140 base power. Yeah, I think it's 100. Oh, there it is. 120 base power, 100 accuracy. It's like close combat, so it drops your defenses after you use it. Um, so back in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we saw people use Dragon Ascent, Extreme Speed, Swords Dance, Protect, because you didn't really need a dragon move. In this case, you may not need one still, but you're going to struggle with Steel types. You're going to struggle with Zacian, especially if it's carrying Play Rough as coverage. All in all, I think Rayquaza is probably just a C tier. It kills me to do that because Rayquaza is one of my favorites, but I think that Rayquaza just doesn't have enough going for it to be super awesome. If some of these extra speed stats were distributed differently, some of these extra offensive stats were distributed differently, then maybe. But unfortunately for Rayquaza, it just doesn't have enough going for it in this metagame. Reshiram. Reshiram is one that I don't know a ton about previously. I've done some research on it, and being a dragon fire typing has a lot of perks. Turbo Blaze, in my understanding, is basically just the same as Mold Breaker, which is good. So Reshiram is a dragon fire type, reasonable Dynamax option. We've seen this previously with Mega Charizard X, which saw some usage, albeit fringe, but this thing does match up very well against Zacian. You have a fire move to pressure Zacian. You resist or are neutral to all of its moves it can carry. You resist Wild Charge. You're neutral to Play Rough. You resist Behemoth Blade, and you're neutral to close combat. So good. It's got a very good. It's got a very good Zacian matchup, and so for that reason, I think it's a B tier Pokemon. I think it has some things going for it. 90 speed's not crazy, but 150 special attack is good. Reasonable defense is good HP. I think it gets Blue Flare as its signature move, but the 85% accuracy doesn't matter as much when you're Dynamaxing. It also gets Fusion Flare. It looks like it has some synergy with Fusion Bolt, which must be Zekram's move. If this happens, Fusion's Flare animation will change to look more epic. That's funny. But 100 power, 100 accuracy is pretty solid. 130 power is probably good for a max move as well. Dragon Pulse is good. I think this thing would probably get Draco Meteor, and then for coverage you could run a variety of different things. So for that, I think Reshiram gets B tier. Solgaleo, A tier. Really easy A tier. Might even be S tier. This thing's gonna be good. So base Solgaleo, not the Necrozma form, has 137 HP and 97 speed and 137 attack with Full Metal Body, which prevents other Pokemon from lowering its stats. So you cannot intimidate this thing, which is crazy. It has access to some really solid moves. You can run Sunsteel Strike, you can run Wild Charge, you can run Flare Blitz, you can run a whole bunch of different moves. I think this thing's very, very good. Can't be intimidated, reasonable speed, good bulk, good typing. You can account for this 89 special defense with screens or with EVs, but I think this thing is going to be very, very good. I like it a lot. Good Zacian matchup, like I said, and pretty good matchup against a lot of the other things in the metagame. Xerneas, the king of kings previously of what I've been told. Xerneas was the menace of previous formats. Xerneas is the counterpart to Yveltal from X and Y, and Xerneas has good stats, reasonable speed, an ability called Fairy Aura, which raises the power of fairy moves for all Pokemon in battle. But the real strength of Xerneas is this move right here, Geomancy. Geomancy charges on the first turn. On the second turn, it raises the user's special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages each. So it's like Quiver Dance on steroids. However, people were running Power Herb on this thing to get the boosts straight away. So you could go for Power Herb Geomancy, get your boosts right away, run something with Intimidate on your team to help this defense stat, and then you can just deal a ton of damage. That being said, Dynamax kind of changed this a little bit, and also, for obvious reasons, the inclusion of the Pokemon Zacian. Zacian was made to just basically murder Xerneas. It seems like that at least. But Xerneas has a bit of trouble. It kind of needs to set up to do well because its speed stat's not that great. It doesn't get access to that many good coverage moves. You'd probably run Dazzling Gleam, is my understanding. But if we take a look at the other coverage moves it gets, Thunder, Thunderbolt, Psyshock, Focus Blast can help you out as against the Steel types, but it's not a great max move for Xerneas to use because it doesn't it doesn't help Xerneas when it's maxed. Max fighting boosts your offensive capabilities, so you're basically just a dog to Steel types. You have to run Focus Blast to deal with certain Steel types, and it doesn't even deal with all of them. So in my opinion, Zacian kind of checked this thing back quite a bit, and there's some other strong Pokemon right now in the metagame that check this as well. That being said, Xerneas is still an A-tier Pokemon. It's very, very good. I think that it's still going to see usage. People are still going to run Power Herb, Geomancy, Xerneas. There might even be some like Choice Specs variants that come up. There could be a lot of different things that people do with this Pokemon that make it very good. So for that reason, I think Xerneas definitely still an A-tier. Yveltal. Based on my knowledge of seeing what people have been doing with Yveltal, and Yveltal being very similar to, it's the same stat distribution as Xerneas, with Dark Aura, which is raises the power of Dark type moves from all Pokemon in battle. Dark Flying typing. I think that Xerneas or Yveltal is an S tier Pokemon. Yveltal is we've seen how successful a Pokemon like Galarian Moltres has been in a format like this, and this Pokemon is basically better than Moltres. It's slightly faster. It has better physical defense. It doesn't have as high of special defense, but it has better HP, and it has better offensive capabilities as well. Dark Aura is the same as Xerneas, but for dark moves. So you can potentially run something like Sucker Punch. You could run a mix set. You could run a Oblivion Wing. What's the dark movie? Just Dark Pulse. I thought I got a different one. I thought I got some special dark move. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the flying move. You'd probably run Dark Pulse, Oblivion Wing, and then Sucker Punch. You could run a mix set, and Sucker Punch would give you a form of priority. But the max moves for Yveltal are insane. It gets max Airstream, which boosts your speed, which is obviously very good. I've talked about that before on this channel. And max Darkness drops your opponent's special defense, which lets your next hits deal more damage. You can put a weakness policy on this thing and Volt Switch with Regieleki or Raichu. A lot of cool things you can do with Yveltal. I'm definitely going to be using Yveltal. I think it's an S tier Pokemon for sure. Zamazenta. Boy, how they did not design these Pokemon in the same way. Let's take a look at Zamazenta. This is Zacian's counterpoint with the same ability, Dauntless Shield, rather than Dauntless Sword. Dauntless Shield boosts your defense by 1 stage when you switch in. Good speed stat, reasonable attack stat, phenomenal defense stats, and okay HP. This thing is not Zacian, and it's not good, in my opinion. You could make it work in some sort of capacity, but it's weak to Intimidate. 138 attack Intimidated is not that great. Defensively, sure, it's going to stick around for a long time. It might get Substitute as well. It does. It does get Coaching, which could potentially give it some usage. But all in all, just use Zacian. This thing's a Steel Fighting typing as well, so it's not as good defensively as Zacian is. So unfortunately, Zamazenta goes into the D tier. I just don't think it's very good. So that is Zacian, or that's Zamazenta. Zekrom. Where did I put Zekrom? Zekrom's a really cool Pokemon. Dragon Electric is a really cool typing. It is physical, which is something against the Pokemon. 90 speed's not that phenomenal. Weak to Intimidate. Pokemon like Landorus could give this thing real trouble. But that being said, it also has a bad Zacian matchup. It does resist Steel, which is great, but it does not resist Fairy. And if they are running close combat Wild Charge, you have a quad resist to Electric. so you're only neutral to it, but you can't really pressure it back. You can hit it with an electric move, which is neutral, but I don't think it matches up that well. It's weak to Intimidate. Zekrom, though, it does still have some things going for it, so I think it's a C tier Pokemon. I don't think it's quite bad enough to be in the D tier, but C tier is definitely a reasonable place for Zekrom. And then my last one here is Zygarde. Zygarde Complete. Zygarde Complete. Take a look at this thing. This thing's stats are crazy. So Power Construct is the ability. Power Construct says changes form when HP drops below half. So it goes to this form, and then it goes to this form. So depending on the damage it takes, it'll kind of transform into these other forms. However, there's no real offensive capabilities that this Pokemon has. This thing has seen some singles usage as like a toxic stall Pokemon, but for the vast majority of cases, it just doesn't do anything offensively. 216 HP, 121 defense, and 95 special defense. It's going to be really hard to do any damage to this thing, but it has a 4x ice weakness. Terrible, chaotic neutral matchup against Zacian. Zacian can hit you with a fairy move, but you can hit it with a ground move, but then you're also lower defensive or lower offensive capabilities, so you struggle a bit. I think that Zygarde Complete's probably just a C tier Pokemon. I think that that's a good place for it. It's got some things going for it. It's not quite down in this lower tier of D tier, but C tier is definitely not a bad place for it to be. So that's my tier list. Yeah, I think this is good. This is my opinions. Obviously, I think that certain things could change. I think Dialga could jump up to the S tier. I think Kyogre could go to S tier. I think Solgaleo or Necrozma Duskmane could go to S tier. Xerneas is always something to watch out for. Either of these Ghost Riders could be S tier. Groudon could shoot up in usage. Palkia could be better than I'm anticipating. This is just my initial reaction based on what I think is going to happen in the metagame. How do you match up against Zacian and Yveltal? What do you have going for it outside of those things? How are your max moves? Things like that. So I'm going to personally be doing... I know a lot of people are testing a lot with Zacian right now. Zacian's an obvious Pokemon to use. I'm going to do some testing with Yveltal. I'm going to do some testing with Dialga as well. I think Dialga is pretty solid. And Kyogre and Groudon I'm probably going to do some testing with as well. And I'm really interested in Solgaleo. I think Solgaleo and Necrozma Duskmane are really solid as well. So I've got a lot of testing to do. I'll probably put a video out here soon, just kind of going over some of the common duos in the like what people have done so far in GS Cup. There were some people that were putting on some tournaments for restricted Pokemon in the past couple months, allowing you to practice using 2 Pokemon. Obviously, we can only use 1 now, but I think that that's a good place for a lot of people to start with their team building. So, yeah, I enjoyed making this. I might do some more tier lists in the future. They're fun to do. But that's my take on the restricted format. I'm super excited for this. I've never been able to play through one of these. I'm excited to see the animations. I like the Pokemon. I know a lot of people lose interest in restricted formats because the legendaries are so powerful and they can tend to be a little bit stale. I would encourage you to at least try this format because we don't know exactly how good some of these Pokemon are going to be. We think based on Dynamax being a mechanic, some of them might rise up and be better than we expected. Things like Dialga have never seen usage before, or at least not widespread usage. Things like Solgaleo could be better than they were previously. There's a lot of different things that you can do with Dynamax in the format. Yveltal has really never been good before this. So I think that there's definitely reason to explore this before just writing it off as a lame legendary format. If you've given it a try and you're not a fan afterwards, then by all means, you don't have to continue playing it. But I would encourage you to at least try it. I'm excited. This is my first restricted format. I'm really excited to try testing some things out. And kind of going from there. So let me know what you all thought of this content. I had a lot of fun. It is a longer video. We're approaching an hour here, but I enjoy doing this. This was a lot of fun for me. And leave a comment if you have any feedback for me. Hit the like button or subscribe button if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you all in my next video.